All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is just go through a little bit about um, where the mine, the Burra Mine actually is, and just click on. So do a high-level view. That's the map of Australia. Tonight I'm going to be travelling across Bass Strait down the bottom here. And as I said to a few people before, I'm glad that the low pressure system that's been coming up through this way has already come through, and hopefully by tonight the trip will be a good one. For those of you who've done something like the English Channel crossing, this is longer and the waves are much bigger. So it'll be a bit of fun. Anyway, South Australia is bounded by these white lines here. And this area here is where Burra is. Adelaide, we'll see the next one. Adelaide is to the south, about 140 kilometres away. That's direct. And we've got a similar distance from Burra to the New South Wales and the Victorian border, which is these two lines here. And the township itself, it's made of a few, they call them suburbs, but it's not really that big. So the main part of Burra is in this area here, and this is the open cut over this side. Now, there's a few issues in Mindat. There's something that's a bit of a surprise. First of all, we've got Burra listed, as you can see here, and then you've got all of these different mines and areas that are listed under Burra. And South Australia in Mindat isn't set up the same way as, say, Victoria, where it's local government areas that are at the highest level. So Burra sits in what's called the Regional Council of Goyder. Really, that's what should be in between South Australia and Burra, not these geographical ones, Mount Lofty and North Mount Lofty. And then the other problem is, apart from these two mines here, none of the others are actually in Burra. And we'll see that a bit in a minute. So when I show minerals tonight, it's only going to be from one of these two mines. And here's an example of that. So that's where the Burra Mine itself is. And where the nearest one outside of Burra is the West Burra Mine, which is about 6 kilometres away. But you can see here that the Princess Royal mines are quite a way away, and the Mongolata mines are quite a while away as well. And then it's got Edelweiss mine, which is 20 kilometres from Burra, and I'll just flick back to, oh no, actually I'll see it. There's a type locality mineral that actually comes from there, but it's still listed under Burra, and it shouldn't be. And when we look a bit closer, the Bonaccord and the Burra open cut, the Burra mine, they're only about 1 kilometre apart, and they're actually in the Burra township itself. And even here you can see West Burra is still a fair way out of Burra itself. So have a bit of a look at the history. That's a view of the current open cut. It's not accessible anymore. It's flooded, and it's a bit of a pity because it was a very good place for some fairly significant minerals. And I've titled this one "The Old and the New," and you can see here you've got the old open cut in the foreground, and then we've got wind turbines across the hills in the background. There's lots of wind turbines through the area. So the main Burra Mine was known originally as the Monster Mine. It was
something to make her feel concerned.
Sorry, Becca, can we get you muted? So the Monster Mine was originally found in 1845, so it goes back quite a while. And it was found by a couple of shepherds near the historical records say near Burra Creek. One of those became the Burra Mine itself, and the other one became the Princess Mine, so Princess Royal Mines. And what they found was some brightly coloured, some blue and green outcrops. There were two groups that were formed, and they were known as the Knobs and the Snobs, and they actually purchased the monster mine lease or area, which was quite a large area, and that included both of the two discoveries. They drew lots to see who would end up with which one, and the Knobs ended up with the southern half, which was the Princess Royal, and that closed in 1851, so it didn't operate for very long. The Snobs ended up with the northern half, and that became the Burra Mine. And this is showing the area. If you remember back on the map, it was quite a distance between the township of Burra and the Princess Royal mines, which are down in this area. But the original area, the monster mine, was bounded by that large rectangle there. And up the top here, you can see the Burra Mine and the Bonaccord. And just the key there, SAMA was the Snobs and PRMC was the Knobs. So by 1850, Burra was the largest metal mine in Australia, which probably, it sounds really good, but there weren't that many metal mines either at that stage. Things like Broken Hill wasn't discovered until the 1880s. Many of the Tasmanian, or most of the Tasmanian mines had not been discovered until after that time either. So it wasn't really a competition against a lot, but it still was a pretty big mine. Most of the people that worked there, the men's and the boys, were all Cornish, and all of the positions of responsibility were given to Cornish men, and that was because it was seen to be quite similar in terms of the geology to many of the mining operations in Cornwall. And because Australia was predominantly English in terms of the people that had actually moved here. They imported a lot of the equipment, and you'll see some of the remains of that shortly. But then the production declined. So they've been operating for over a decade. But they stopped underground mining at that particular point in time. Now, looking at some of the historical things that are still there, Henk, if you want to shut your eyes, if you're going to go there yourself, you can do. But we've got a powder magazine, which was originally built in 1847. This has been restored by the National Trust, and it's walled off as well, and it was walled off very early on for obvious reasons. And that's a view of the inside of it. This is chronological, by the way. This is what's left of the mine offices area, and they date back to 1848. There's a few ruins there, all using local stone, of course. And that's the open cut in the background. So you can see this was right on the edge of what is now the open cut. And then in 1850, they had a stables because they used horses for a lot of the, well, didn't have any mechanical other than some steam driven stuff, but they used horses quite a bit, and they had quite a lot, up to 100. And this is the remains of the stables cobble floor that you can still see there. It's quite amazing that this actually remained. You'll see why when we have a look at the open cut. And that was a painting of the stables as it stood in 1858. We've got a few engine houses in South Australia. This is the Morfett's engine house that dates to 1858. This has also been restored, and you can go right up to the top and stand out on those two areas up the top there and look out over the mine. And then we've got a winding house as well. Obviously not restored, but still fairly well intact, which is pretty good. And then we've got Graves engine house, which again sits on the top bench of the open cut itself. And you can see that they took the open cut out quite close to where that particular building was. And up in the top right-hand corner there is a chimney that dates back to 1874. And then we've got on the left-hand side, this area here was the ore floor, and this is the remains of the dressing tower, both from 1870. That's another chimney that's still intact in 1876, from 1876. And near one of the engine or the winding house, there's the remains of the boiler house with one of the boilers. There were 6 of those, all Cornish. Then we jump forward a bit. So it shut down from an underground perspective, and then opened. There was an initial open cut operation that was worked from 1870 through to 1877, but it didn't make any money. The modern open cut, the one we can see at the moment, that dates back to the 1970s to 80s, and they went down to a depth of 100 meters. And that's where the bulk of the mineral specimens from Burra have actually come from. And all up it produced about 50,000 tonnes of copper between 1845 and 1877, and about 24,000 tonnes of copper produced during the decade, the modern operations. This is an old photo that shows the early open cut. So this is 1904. And here you can see Morfett's engine house there with a frame in front of it. So the engine house is behind. We've got the winding house, which currently doesn't have a roof, but you can still see where it was. That was one that we didn't see because there's nothing left of it. And then there was a water wheel over this side. There's nothing left of that either. And the ore treatment plant is where the ore floor was. You can see one of the chimneys in the background that we saw a shot of before. And the mine offices is over on this side here. So you can see that even the early open cut went fairly far to the south, close to the mine offices themselves. And this is a map of the overall area. You can see how many shafts there were when they were doing the underground operations. It was fairly substantial. The ore body itself runs basically through the middle of that area there. There's your Morfett engine shop here, and the stables area. And then over this side, the Graves engine shaft that we saw in an earlier photo, just to give you an idea of where things are at. And there's a cross-section of the mine, including the current open cut. So you can see here, that's the yellow is the ore body, or the ore body area. And the vast majority of the workings were under the Morfett shaft on this end, but it was fairly extensive, so quite a few hundred meters. And that's the current open cut, which went down to 100 meters, and the water level is about halfway, about half full. All right, just looking a bit at the geology, the ore body formed in a dolomite rock, and it's confined by 2 faults. The host rocks, the dolomites, date back about 650 million years. And the thinking is that the copper mineralization happened about 300 or 400 million years ago through volcanic activity. The ore zone itself was up to 70 meters wide, and mineralization occurred as veins and nodules, and you'll see a bit of evidence of that in a while. And then the actual ore was formed, so the original copper would have been very disseminated, and then over millions of years through secondary enrichment formed a payable, mineable ore body. Here's another view of the open cut itself, the current open cut. The Morfett's engine house and the winding house are up, get that out of the way, up the top there, and then there's a lookout down at the other end as well. We'll see a shot from that shortly. And here's the only view where you can still see one of the evidence of one of the faults. So this diagonal rock that you can see structure through there is the Kingston fault, which bounds that side of the ore body. It's the only bit of evidence that is left that is visible. And that's the Graves engine house again up on the top left. We'll have a look at some of the minerals. Now I've marked all of the photos where the mineral specimen is not mine or the photo is not mine or both. And so we'll go through. I've got to thank a few people as we go through for those. And that is because even though there are quite a few minerals that are listed, they're not necessarily ones that you can collect or have been found in recent times. So this first view here from MinDat shows you at the Burra level. Remember I said that Burra includes quite a lot of other mineral species, sorry, a lot of other mines that include other species that are not found at Burra proper, including Solvanite, which is the Edelweiss mine type locality one. So I've crossed out all of the ones that are not found at Burra, and that leaves us with a shorter list. The only one in MinDat for Bon Accord is Aragonite, but everything else on that list has been found at Burra. And you can see there that there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 of them that MinDat has photos for, which is less than half. So it's 46 or so that have been recorded. And again, that's because most of them probably predate the modern operations. First one is not one of mine, so it's a Mark Willoughby specimen and photo. I've done what I normally do. I've included the chemical formula here, so you can see that. And I've included the size, so you can see what size the specimen as well. And this is Actinolite, Tremolite, so it's somewhere in the series between the two. And that's the orange material here, so fibrous material, probably stained by iron oxides. The only one that I've got from the Bon Accord mine is an Aragonite. Fluoresces quite nicely and phosphoresces. Atacomite, not as common here as some of the other South Australian mines, particularly in the Moonta Wallaroo area, but still quite nice crystals. This one's a Mark Willoughby one. Shows the typical terminations of Atacomite, very dark green, almost black. Now, this one is a photo that I actually took there. So near the engine house, you can still see rocks that show some of what the shepherds would have probably originally seen. And it's got Azurite, Malachite, and probably Chrysocolla that is showing on the outside of the rocks there. Nothing collectible, but it's good to see it. It's a small Azurite with a little bit of malachite down the bottom, a little bit of replacement of malachite after Azurite. Another Azurite. That's a very old photo. I haven't had time to retake that one yet. Remember I said before that the copper mineralization occurred in nodules as well. And this is a good example of that. So in the dolomite, it formed in nodules such as this. And you can see here we've got, this was probably originally, actually it's interesting. You can see malachite there in the core of that one. So whether this is actually Azurite after malachite or whether it's malachite replacing from the inside as well as the outside, I don't know. The normal, of course, is malachite replacing Azurite, but this one could be the other way around. There's a nice nodule in James Melville's collection. And a couple of small ones, very nice crystalline form. And that looks to be partially replaced by maybe pseudo-malachite. It's a darker green than the normal malachite. And here it shows Azurite after malachite. bladed azurite crystals. Barite's very rare. It's a Mark Willoughby photo and it's in a private collection. There's not too many barites that have been found. One of the unusual pseudomorphs, bornite after pyrite. So it's retained the pyritohedron crystal form, but it's now bornite. And there's also chalcocite after pyrite, I think, that has been found there as well. Calcite is the white material here with very small barites. You can just see these sort of yellowish areas. And probably the ones here that are coated with malachite as well, on a malachite base. A Rod Martin specimen, post-mining, but very beautiful. It's nice to see curved crystals like that. You normally see that in gypsum more so than chalcanthite, but you can get it in many sulfates. This one's not a total replacement. This is chalcocite on the surface of pyrite, whereas the bornite was a replacement. Green Chrysocolla with a bit of barite up the back here, and malachite. Native copper, again not very common. Gotch specimen. Excuse me. And copper with cuprite. You can see the small areas of copper in the center of the cuprite there. It's probably cuprite replacing the copper. And another one with cuprite and altering to malachite. A little bit of native copper down the left-hand side. A very unusual one, ferrierite, was found a few years ago. I think the late Vince Peasley found it and had it analysed. So it's quite an unusual mineral to actually find in this particular location. Another Rod Martin one, gypsum sprays. Again, probably post-mining. Now, that's not lobethanite in the middle. That's obviously an azurite crystal, but this is all lobethanite around the outside. And a bit of blue Chrysocolla. Another lobethanite, another old photo that needs to be badly retaken. Well, not badly retaken, retaken badly is probably a better way of putting it. Another one of the rocks in situ that you can see at the moment. This is malachite, probably with Chrysocolla as well, because there is malachite there. And they're quite large rocks too. Malachite is, with azurite, is one of the more common minerals. And you can see here that it forms as the botryoidal type as well as bladed crystals. These ones potentially could be malachite after azurite, just by looking by the crystal form. It does occur in banded botryoidal form. This one's been polished on the one side, but it shows the banding quite nicely. And this is one in the information centre where, Henk, if you do go there and you do want to do the tour, the mine tour, the best way to do is to go and get I think they call it a passport in the information centre in Burra. And it gives you access to all of the fenced off areas within the mine as well. And this is sitting on their bookshelf, so it's a decent size. And then we've got a malachite after azurite, quite a good pseudomorph. And a pseudomalachite, it's a very small one, but very well formed. Quartz is rare. This one sitting over the top of azurite. So we get a very nice colour combination there. It's a Rod Martin specimen. And that is it. So it's a quick one today, only half an hour.
That was awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Oh, sorry, one more.
Thanks, Steve.
One more. Hang on. Questions. And that one. Sorry, I forgot about that one. There's a specimen that I actually got at a show last weekend here in Victoria, and that's it there. So quite a nice little polished Azurite and Malachite. Any questions?
That's very interesting.
Yeah, very nice. But I have a question. Is it only the major ore minerals, Malachite and Azurite, are there not very secondary minerals there?
No, not a lot. There's just a bit of Aragonite, a bit of phosphate in there with the pseudo malachite,
Yeah.
Chrysocolla, and not much else. Not much else.
All right.
A lot of the ore body, they still mined sulfides when they got down a bit. But the oxidized zone was predominantly carbonates.
Yeah. Okay.
So there are no dumps.
There could be. So
That's the most interesting part.
yeah. Let me see if I can just bring up Google Maps or Google Earth or whatever. I'll just give me a second. I'll see if I can actually show you, Henk, when you get there, what to look for.
We still have months.
That's okay. That's okay. Just bear with for a second. Bring it up. Let's do the. Let's get rid of that. Okay, I'll just share the screen for a minute so you can see. So this is green one. Right, so you can see the satellite view.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I can see. Yeah.
So I'll go into here. So the information center is down here in the main borough. And what you do is you drive up here and you go into this mine lookout road. Yes. So there's actually there's a chimney on the corner here, so you can't miss it. And when you drive up there, to go into the actual mine area itself is down this way. There's a car park here, and it's gated, and the passport gives you access to all of this area, which is the historic area. Now, outside of the historic area, you've got potential dump material here.
Okay.
And in this area here, just off the mine lookout road. I didn't have time to have a good look, but there's lots of rock there, so there could be some minerals. And I think in this area too. And then if you also have time, and time is obviously the difficulty, there's also a quarry further up this way somewhere. Not sure exactly where it is now, but the Bonaccord was in this area too. So if you find an area that where there's not, there, it might be that area there maybe. But that area there is probably the best chance to find anything in sort of dump material.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
I'll go back there at some stage and have a look as well, but didn't really have time. We figured that to do it justice, even to look at some of the other historical stuff, because there's a museum there, there are other things to actually look at. You really need to spend the whole day, which means you probably should stay there for a couple of nights. We were only there for like a few hours, basically. So, but it's the first time for us, so we'll go back.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Please.
Just more of a comment. At the recent CMMA symposium in Brock University in Ontario, I bought a couple of boxes of Australian Micromount material from Bill Lechner. And I just went through the boxes while we were talking here, and I've got 2 specimens from Burra.
Excellent.
One is Azurite and the other is Malachite. So
There's
my
a surprise.
project tonight is look them over and take some photographs and put them on the Facebook group.
Yeah, excellent. I did say that those are the 2 most common minerals there, so it's not
Yeah.
surprising. There was a lot of Azurite and Malachite that came out,
Yeah.
made its way to collectors, which is good.
So that's my project for tonight.
Nice. And oh, very good. So Gur has just put in the chat. It's his birthday tomorrow, and he's
Oh.
fully retired. Very good.
Yes, Steve.
Nice, Gaurav.
Where are the cakes, Gerhard?
Yeah,
Where's the beer?
yeah.
Retirement is good, Gerhard. Take it.
There you go.
Cheers. That's early morning beer. Very, very right.
Yeah.
Jane has a question, but she asked if she is mute.
Yeah, Jane, do you want to type it into the chat maybe?
He doesn't look muted.
I'm not showing her muted.
No,
No.
This is right,
Oh,
Nigel from Burra.
Well, that's nice.
Hi, Steve. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, that's fairly typical of what you can find there, what you could find there, Steve. So it's good.
and this
Looks like a nice one.
massive malachite.
Yeah.
That's it. So I don't think they're going to be very unusual under the microscope, but I'll take a look.
So Jane, you can't put the question into the chat?
She's not there.
Yeah, she's there.
She's here.
Yeah, you only don't hear her.
Oh, yeah, there she is.
Yeah, it's got some sort of sound issue. Jane's not actually muted, but the audio's
That
not
doesn't
working.
work.
No.
Huh.
Well, the audio's working because she could obviously hear.
Yeah.
But,
Wow.
the microphone's not working. While Jane's doing that, are there any other questions?
Yeah, how old is Gerhard?
Retirement age.
21 and some months.
60 plus,
I think he's younger
at
than me.
least. Yeah, probably.
A couple of years anyway. Oh, there we go. Given the water shortages, is it presumptuous to think the water table will fall in the open cut pool to allow some collecting on historical grounds? Very good question, Jane. I don't think it's going to happen. I think water tables, I don't think it's going to be something that will drop in that area. It might move a little bit over time up and down, but they do have some decent rainfall through there as well from time to time, even though it's a fairly arid area. But the second part of that is, will they actually allow collecting on historical grounds? That's probably less likely at the moment, even though it was, such a famous mine. They're probably, the way that it's being managed, it's probably less likely. You can't even get down into those areas at the moment. That could be a safety issue, of course, but I don't know. But if the water table does drop and they do change, there'll be a lot of collectors over here that will be straight over there to have a look.
And that water table also represents the the kind of space in which the ore was doing the secondary enrichment. So that zone where it goes up and down tends to be the secondary enrichment zone, and
I
above
don't
that
think-
tends to be the oxidation zone.
I don't think it's something
So-
that actually, and they're probably pumping it out to keep it down. Because if you go back to some of the early photos, there's definitely a pump. It looks like a pump in the air, in the water, but that's probably just to make sure it doesn't take up any more of the open cut, because they want people to be able to look into it. But if they run out of money, who knows, they might stop pumping and the water level might rise even more.
I mean, typically with sulfide-based copper mines, the water ends up being quite toxic because the sulfides oxidize, you get sulfuric acid that then leaches all the metals out, and you have heavy metal contaminated acidic water in your mine hole, which is not something you really want to pump out into creeks.
And copper is getting a bad name these days as well. It never used to be one of the bad ones, but now it's considered to be bad. So
I mean, in terms of toxicity, it's very toxic. We tend to forget because as a metal or as a carbonate, it's not particularly bioavailable, whereas arsenic will literally just dissolve straight through into your skin from your skin acids.
Yeah.
So
or mercury will just come through the wall from the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know, Jane. There could be.
Just going back to the water level, like I know they had to start pumping fairly early in the 1800s with that mine. They had to, I think they stopped and got the pumps from Cornwall.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when we were there, which was probably 15 years ago, the water level was quite a lot higher. So it does seem to have gone down a bit. Yeah, like if I look back at my photos,
Yeah.
it was higher. And we saw kangaroos hopping around the edge, which took a nice photo.
The only wildlife that we saw there was a hawk of some sort that perched itself on a wall very near. I've got some good photos of it.
Yeah.
Up on top of one of the chimneys. So,
Yeah.
but there
Yeah.
was nothing else around. So.
Yeah.
Well, if there's a hawk, there should be some small rodents around.
Yeah, there was probably lots of mice and rabbits and stuff, and things
Yeah.
like that. But... All right. No other questions?
I have one thing from Peter Elliott. I have a specimen from Burra, which should be analyzed, and it says apatite on libethenite, but apatite is not mentioned in the list anywhere.
So
I can show you if you want.
yeah, sure. That's definitely
I share my screen. Just a moment.
because there's obviously phosphate there because we've got the pseudo-malachite as well.
Yeah.
But I know that
This one.
Peter, oh, that's nice. Peter does
yeah.
find some. He does find some interesting stuff.
Yeah, this should be apatite, blue apatite on green libethenite in the background.
Yeah, and that's probably the libethenite crystals underneath the apatite. Then yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's nice.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that Peter does find some stuff. He doesn't necessarily update Minda, and it doesn't necessarily get into the system unless it's somebody else that actually puts it in.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Of course. I trust Peter more than Minda.
Yeah.
A lot more.
Yeah.
Sure. I know.
Unless it got put in against one of the other Burra mines.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Probably.
That was good. Thank you, Hank.
Hank, there is fluorapatite mentioned.
Oh, is it?
Sorry. Does it?
Yeah, it's on the list.
Oh yeah.
Fluorapatite,
Sure.
yeah.
Yes. Fluorapatite is on the list. Okay. Yeah. Sure. I see it now. Yeah. Okay. Well, probably it'll be that.
Gerhard, you won't get any more unless it's from old collections. So, yeah, appreciate them. All right. If there's nothing else, we might finish up, and then I'll go and start preparing for my trip.
Oh, have a good trip then.
Have a good trip.
Yeah.
Well,
Are you going on holiday there?
Hopefully the waves have gone down.
Don't forget your passport.
Yeah, I know. Di's been over there 2.5 weeks already. She's babysitting, and so I've got to go and save her.
If that's what she wants.
Yeah, I think so.
I hope so. Hmm.
Yeah, I'll get the video done before I go though. So
Okay.
Have a safe trip.
thank you. I'll be back before the next one. Yeah, I might not get the reminder out. I might have to do it a bit earlier because I might be traveling. It depends what day I come back. But we'll see. Anyway, until next time, thank you all for attending.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
See you in
Bye.
2 weeks.
Right.
Bye
Bye all.
bye.
Take care, guys.